on Epstein's Island and things that are rumored to have there are underage girls, really young too, like 12, like young girls that are testifying now, I was there, this. Those are illegal activities.
Many Hollywood A-listers know exactly what went down on Epstein's Island, but one of them is finally stepping up and exposing some of the horrors that went on that island, and that's Daniel Baldwin. More than that, he's also dropping names.
Have you heard vivid stories of what took place on that island?
I have been with people that I have told me, like Hollywood isn't a place that people their mouths off and tell things that aren't true. But I know people that have told me either secondhand or that they themselves had been there.
Are the days finally numbered for all the high-profile celebrities, politicians, and billionaires who got down and dirty and knee-deep in illegal activities and whose names are all nicely tied up in a bow in Epstein's files?
What people I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage. Now if you stay in the room, you've asked for trouble, and you're about to get trouble because he had a camera hidden in the room, and he has all kinds of videos, supposedly, of those events. Now, what does that look like if that came out 8 years ago and Hillary Clinton's husband was involved? What does that look like if Tim Walz was? Again, you could shape the direction of a country based on having the wrong person in one of those videos. And I believe those types of influential people are involved in those, which is why you probably will never see them.
More and more documents are being released in relation to the Epstein case, and more elite names are being exposed. And here's just some of the big names we know of so far. Alec Baldwin. Y'all, this one is interesting because his friendship with Epstein was called out by radio personality and comedian Adam Carolla, and recently his name has been listed on Epstein's official contact list.
Colleagues aren't here because they hate you, and your best friend isn't here because he hung himself in a Manhattan prison cell. What do you miss more, the plane or the island?
Now, before we go all in, let's be fair. Just because someone's name was in the book doesn't mean they were flying out to Epstein's Island, but let's not act like this was just a random contacts list. And what makes this whole situation messy is that Alec's own brother, Daniel Baldwin, is now speaking out about how the Hollywood connection runs.
I saw some wild stuff and I was pretty naive to it because, do you want to be with Angela and so and so? And I go, no, why would I want to be more than one? I only have two hands, and so I never did any of that. I never, did that kind of freaky or wild stuff, but I definitely, put myself in situations that were high risk.
Now, Daniel hasn't come out and thrown Alec under the bus, but he did say he personally knows people who were part of Epstein's world. So we gotta ask, was Alec Baldwin just a casual contact, or is there more to the story? Because what are the odds that two people from the same Hollywood family somehow end up connected to the same billionaire? I mean, Hollywood is big, but it ain't that big. So was Alec Baldwin just a name in the book, or was he more involved than we've been led to believe? That's the question. And listen, we already know Alec Baldwin has a history of being connected to powerful and controversial people in the industry, so the fact that his name popped up in Epstein's records, that's not something to ignore. Because if there's one thing we've learned in all this Epstein mess, it's that nothing is ever a coincidence. Mick Jagger.
I am naturally very insensitive to other people's feelings.
All right, now this one had a lot of people scratching their heads. Mick Jagger, the Rolling Stones frontman? Yes, his name was right there in Epstein's little black book. And before anybody says, well, rich people know other rich people, yeah, that's true. But let's not act like Epstein was just a regular socialite throwing casual dinner parties. His whole network was built on connections that served a purpose. And let's be honest, nobody is shocked that rock stars, billionaires, and high-profile politicians were part of the same circles.
For the last 15 years, he's just been impregnating women all over the country and cutting them a check. There's stories that you hear that you're like, no, he didn't.
We know Mick Jagger has been in the industry for decades, and he's definitely had his share of wild party days. But the thing about Epstein, this wasn't just about partying. See, Epstein wasn't some random celebrity groupie trying to get close to these stars. He built a web of powerful connections. He had business moguls, politicians, Hollywood stars, and even royalty in his back pocket. And let's be real, you don't get on Epstein's radar by accident. So was Mick Jagger just another rich and famous dude who happened to cross paths with Epstein? Maybe, but we've seen this play out too many times. People in Epstein's circle weren't just there for small talk. And here's the other thing. Epstein didn't just collect high-profile friends for the fun of it, he made deals with them. He provided favors. He leveraged relationships. And if he was using some people for power and influence, who's to say what kind of involvement Mick Jagger had?
Not with what he's got, because he could just lay there all day, have young girls massage him.
Now let's be clear, there's no public evidence that Mick Jagger ever visited Epstein's island or that he was involved in anything illegal. But the fact that his name is even in Epstein's book, that raises questions. Because if this was just about social connections, why are so many people staying quiet about their friendship with Epstein? Prince Andrew.
You said you went to break up the relationship, and yet you stayed at that New York mansion several days. I'm wondering how long.
But I was doing a number of other things while I was there.
But you were staying at the house of
Yes.
a convicted sex offender.
It was a convenient place to stay. I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do. And I admit fully that my judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable, but that's just the way it is.
Now, if there's one name on this list that's beyond suspicious, it's Prince Andrew. This man didn't just get caught up in the Epstein mess, he was right in the middle of it. And instead of laying low and letting things die down, he decided to do an interview to clear his name. And oh man, it was a disaster.
Going to Jeffrey's was not about partying. Absolutely not.
You said you weren't very good friends, but would you describe him as a good friend? Did you trust him?
Yes, I think I probably did.
So back in 2019, Prince Andrew sat down with the BBC for an interview about his friendship with Epstein, and instead of clearing anything up, he just made it worse. He claimed he had no idea Epstein was involved in anything illegal.
You've been on his private plane.
Yes.
You've been to stay on his private island.
Yes.
You've stayed at his home in Palm Beach.
Yes.
You visited Ghislaine Maxwell's house in Belgravia in London.
Yes.
But things get messy when we bring Virginia Giuffre into this timeline. So this girl sued Prince Andrew, saying Epstein paid her $15,000 to sleep with him on multiple occasions. But what did the royal family do? Well, they paid her off.
Britain's Prince Andrew, who has ended a sexual abuse lawsuit by agreeing to a reported multi-million-dollar settlement. Queen Elizabeth's middle son will not have to answer questions under oath about Virginia Giuffre, who claims to be a victim of alleged Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep, instead of fighting the case in court, Prince Andrew decided to drop $16 million. But innocent people don't usually hand over this much money just to avoid a public trial.
How much pressure was Prince Andrew under by the royal family to settle?
Everyone in the royal family was obviously very keen to avert a full-blown trial.
Prince Andrew and the entire royal family were afraid of getting involved in this type of scandal. Their whole reputation was on the line. We're talking about actual lawsuits, actual settlements, and actual receipts. And yet somehow he's still walking free. So when folks say just because someone's name was in Epstein's book doesn't mean they did anything, sure, they have a valid point. But when you look at Prince Andrew, who is closely connected with Epstein, it makes you wonder how many others on that list have something to hide. Ethel Kennedy.
No, I don't like to get into would've, could've, should've, but I think anyone who was around in those days and saw him and knew how he felt, things could be a lot better now.
All right, now this one really had people scratching their heads. Ethel Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s mother, was in Epstein's contacts. Now let's be real, was Ethel Kennedy flying out to Epstein's island? Highly doubtful. But that's not even the point. The real question is, why was Epstein connected to the Kennedys at all? See, when we talk about elite circles, Epstein wasn't just hanging around celebrities and billionaires, he had strong connections with political families too. As per Robert F. Kennedy, he used to visit his mother with Epstein on his private jet.
My plane rides with Jeffrey Epstein, I took 2 plane rides with him. Once in 1993, when I went down to visit my mother in Palm Beach. My wife knew his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, and they offered us a ride when we were going down to see my mother.
Now, the Kennedy family has been linked to scandals for decades. From Marilyn Monroe's mysterious passing to JFK's alleged affairs, there's been a long-running theory that the Kennedys were involved in way more than what regular folks knew. So when we see Ethel Kennedy's name in Epstein's book, it raises some serious questions. Did she know what was really going on? Because Epstein didn't just collect names for fun, every name in that book meant something to him, whether it was for business, blackmail, or something worse. And it's not just about Ethel herself, it's about who else in her family might have had secret connections with Epstein. Because if there's one thing we know, it's that powerful people protect themselves at every cost. Alan Dershowitz.
People know about my famous cases, Klaus von Bülow or Jeffrey Epstein or O.J. Simpson. I don't choose sides. I'm a lawyer. I'm like a doctor and I'm like a priest. I represent people who need representation.
Alan Dershowitz isn't just some random lawyer. He's one of the biggest defense attorneys in the country. He has had high-profile clients like O.J. Simpson, Donald Trump, and Jeffrey Epstein himself. Yeah, you read that right. Epstein didn't just know Alan. Alan was one of his closest legal defenders. And when people started looking into their friendship, it got messy because he was the only guy openly supporting him in live interviews.
I never saw him in the presence of any underage person or even anybody close to being underage.
Now everyone heard what Alan said, but that's not the complete story. Virginia Giuffre, the same woman who sued Prince Andrew, also accused him of being involved in Epstein's trafficking ring. And how did he respond? Take a look.
Let me be very clear. I never met Virginia Roberts. I never heard of her. And she never met me or heard of me.
Now let's pause for a second. If someone accuses you of something and you know for a fact you're innocent, sure, you would deny it. But Alan Dershowitz didn't just deny these claims, he went into revenge mode. And let's not forget, he wasn't just Epstein's lawyer. He was involved in getting Epstein the plea deal back in 2008 that let him off the hook with zero punishment. And if Alan was this aggressive in standing up for Epstein, what was he really protecting? Well, at this point, Daniel Baldwin is making one thing clear. This ain't over.
They're selling those videos. So if you're Tommy X, and Tommy X is a big movie star, and he was at some of the Diddy parties, he was in one of those bedrooms with 3 other men, and he's happily married to a woman, and blah. Tommy doesn't want that video to come out. He does not want it to come out. Same thing for Jeffrey Epstein.
Hollywood might be trying to move on, but the Epstein list isn't fully out yet. Some names are still redacted, and plenty of files haven't been released. So the question is, who else is hiding in the shadows? Because if the people we already know about are this powerful, imagine the ones we haven't seen yet, the ones who are still being protected at all cost. According to Baldwin, a lot of individuals are feeling the heat because once those footage from Epstein's Island will be released, it will definitely be a game over for a lot of folks.
Interesting thing about the Epstein and the theory about Epstein is we know he filmed people for sure on that island. He has a lot of movies, a lot of films of people that are very powerful political figures.
See, here's what a lot of people are finally realizing. This was never just about one man. Epstein wasn't some rogue billionaire doing illegal stuff. There was an entire group of people working under him, and we've seen it over and over again. Think about how many big scandals get resolved in a few months. How many times someone gets exposed and suddenly the conversation just stops. The media controls what we see, and when elites are involved, they make sure we don't see it all. When Harvey Weinstein got exposed, people stayed quiet for years. When Dan Schneider's Nickelodeon scandals came out, they acted like they didn't know. And now, with Epstein's list, they're pretending it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal, because for decades, this stuff was happening right in front of us and people with power kept it hidden. And Baldwin is saying what a lot of people already suspect. The walls are closing in. The reason some names still haven't been released is because those people have enough power to keep them buried. But for how long? Do y'all think we're ever gonna get the full list? Or do you think they're gonna bury this scandal like they always do? Leave your thoughts in the comments and be sure to check out our other videos for more celebrity bombshells where we expose some of Hollywood's cringiest secrets.